All right. Well, Michael had talked to me about just sharing a little bit of my journey with you guys. Obviously, sharing everything with any of us would be difficult, but we've all been sharing throughout anyways. I shared this with my church in just a couple of weeks for the first time. I had shared it one-on-one little bits and not really in depth with people before, and then I decided I'm kind of at this point going to go all in, and so I decided one Sunday evening, we have like a once a month service, and I decided to share it with my church family. And I was a basket case, and I really fell apart, but I actually feel really good sharing with you guys, so I wanted to share this with you, and these are to keep me on cue, as my wife says, so I don't wander, start talking about everything. But I wanted to share with you a bit of my journey, what Michael would call one of many conversions. This is what for quite a few years I've called, since 2010, I've called this like the climax of my life. This is, out of conversions, this would be like the conversion I was telling Michelle the other day. This would be the conversion where she was talking about how Michael had mentioned threads coming out of your rug, kind of getting unwoven. And this was more like the Spirit grabbing a hold of my rug, throwing my rug out from underneath of me and just dropping it on my chest and go, that whole thing needs to go. And it just, me kind of looking up and being completely like, I don't know anything right now, and I have to start over. And so I want to share that with you guys. It's my, it's my unchurched term, my climax of my life. My church term would be more or less my road to Damascus, my face-to-face with Jesus, kind of seeing who I am and how I don't look anything like him. So anyways, I'm not going to heavily go into any theological stuff for the fact that I am really giving this from the standpoint of where I was at and what my understanding of it was. Back in 2010, I wasn't studying theology. Every question I'd ever asked at church I got in trouble with, so I just stopped. And so it's really from that outlook and kind of where I was at in that journey and how I got to here, I guess. So at that time, when this had actually happened, I'm going to go into it a little bit here in a minute, but when this had happened, this big event in my life, I had been back from combat for right around 8 or 9 months, and I was living out in Fort Hood with my family, Fort Hood, Texas, and we had actually just had the shooting down that happened in the end of 2009, November 5th, 2009. And I had guys in my unit that were actually involved in that. We were getting ready to train a unit, and we had brought them in. I had met a lot of the people and stuff, and so I started to get familiar with the people, and I knew a few of the people that were killed, as well as I knew a few of the people that were injured as well. And I had actually been in that building earlier that day. It was an SRT site. It was a pretty common place if you were going to meet in the unit coming in. So I was actually there and had taken a late lunch, and I left, and then the base closed down, and all the shooting happened. And I was about 6 months into a journey in my life where I really had realized via my wife that I wasn't going to have a wife or children unless I started to get help. And I was strongly dealt with depression, PTSD, suicidal thoughts like all day. Suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts, kind of a mix of everything. That's kind of a common thing with combat vets. Some of those thoughts, I'll just give you a couple, kind of rough. But pulling up kids, walking across, letting kids walk across to go to school, and the person standing with a little stop sign, and you're pulling up, and just, when we were overseas, you never stopped. Everything was movement. If you stopped, you were getting out of the vehicle, and you were pulling up positions to get ready to fight. You were pulling up for security. I was still going through those fears, and pulling up even to stop at a stop sign or a stoplight, I got just really like hands cold and sweaty, and I couldn't handle the fear that I felt. I just wanted to be moving all the time. And so even pulling up with kids there and stuff, the thoughts that would go through my head, here these kids are heading off to school, and there's a lady or a gentleman standing with a stop sign trying, stopping us. And one of the guys that was with me had deployed with me, and one day he tapped me and he goes, am I the only one, there's a couple other guys in the back, he goes, am I the only one that just wants to mow these kids down and keep moving? And I just looked at him and I was like, I'm glad to know I'm not the only one thinking that. I can't stand stopping and being here. And I just wanted to go back overseas. I didn't want to be with my family. I didn't know how to treat my wife. I didn't know how to be around my children. I buried myself in work, and I just didn't come home. When I came home, I took a shower, I grabbed my stuff, and I headed back out the door. I didn't really want to be around my family. And so we had started going to church. Amanda had, my wife, and she had started heading off to church and to joining this congregation. She had kind of been visiting congregations, and I used every excuse in the world to not go to church for about 6 months. I ran out of excuses, and she had asked me, come, and she had been trying churches out. And so I went with her, and we found, this one church, and went, and the first time we went, they were doing baptisms at the church, and it was, really old songs that kind of reminded me of when I was a little kid, and they were doing baptisms, which I thought was actually pretty cool. I haven't seen baptism in a long time. And the people were really loving. I almost couldn't make it to my seat without people talking to me. But it did the opposite effect on me. It made me nervous. It made me upset. I didn't want to be there. I was just fidgeting in my seat. I felt like I was an absolute puddle. I was stuck to my shirt, to my seat, and I was just like, get me out of here. Here I'm in a church, and I'm like, I couldn't feel God if my life depended on me, because God hates me, and I don't even know if He exists, and I just don't want to be here. I haven't touched my Bible in God knows how long, don't even know where it is, and I just don't want to be here. Well, there's this little old lady sitting next to us, and it's always one of those little old ladies sitting next to you. And the pastor goes, all right, well, everybody hold hands, we're going to pray. And he said that, and you'd have thought he just told me to take off my clothes in front of everybody, because I immediately just froze. I was like, I don't even hold my wife's hand. I don't like to be touched. I don't like to... And so this lady, I put my hands like this. Everybody hold hands, and my hands went right on my lap. Like no one's touching me. I didn't hold my wife's hand, and she was on the other side of me. So the lady reaches over, puts her hand on top of mine, squeezes my hand, pulls my hand, and I went like this and pulled my hand back. She pulls my hand over and is pulling my hand back. I was literally like hyperventilating at this point. I'm like, I'm gonna keel over. And Amanda looks over, I see her tip her head forward, and she just leans back. And I looked over at her, and she goes, it's gonna be okay. And I'm like, the lady's gonna die. I'm just freaking out. She's like this tall. I am literally panic attack in the middle of church. And the thought going through my head is, if I make it without just standing up and getting out of this place, I'm never coming back to church the rest of my life. So they're praying, and literally I'm starting to feel emotion well up inside of me. This place was, I later, years later, this was my real experience of a church that actually loved people. And you could tell in the way that they reached out to the community. And they were pretty much known as like the poor church, but they were changing the whole area around them. And so this was my first real experience of like an actual what a church should be, but I had all the opposite experiences, so I was just devastated at this point. So they get done, with prayer, and second she looses my hand's boom, right back in my lap. Church gets done, and I stand up. The second prayer's done, I stand up, there's people on either side of me, and I'm like, I gotta go. So I start moving my way out, and she's standing there, she stands up and hugs me. I just stopped, and I went like this. I didn't touch her, I didn't do anything. I was like, and I just stopped breathing. She sat down and I scooted my way out and I went out to the car. Amanda, you know, shook everybody's hand. She went and picked the kids up and she headed out and she's like, you know, the people, they told us about the kids, said that, you know, they were just awesome. She had been to some other churches where they had actually taken our son when we visited, and it was like kind of Wednesday night and there was like 20 people there, and she said, you know, no one talked to her. They had taken our oldest son and set him in the superintendent's office, because church needs a superintendent, I guess. So they sat him in the superintendent's office because he was too hyper. This is my analytical son who was just acting like a little boy. And so they sat him in the superintendent's office the whole time because he was screwing up. And so she's like, well, I'm not coming back here again, you know? And so she, trial by error, but she came out to the car anyways, and she's like, well, that was nice. What do you think? And I'm like, I don't care, not going to church at all. So we left, and I went to Walmart a couple days later, and that old lady was one of the ladies standing in the front of Walmart. And I walk in, and I'm like, oh. I'm going into the other side of Walmart, right? So I to the other side of Walmart. She walked through the inside all the way to the other side of Walmart and was waiting there and gave me a hug. And this time, she like put her arms up here, so I'm like bending down like 3.5 feet, and I'm like, you're killing me. Like, what the heck? This lady like tormented me for like 3 weeks, because every time I got sent to the store, she was there. I would switch sides, didn't matter. She like scouted me out to just hug me. She never said anything, she just hugged me. In fact, she stuttered and actually struggled speaking, and I didn't know that at that point. So the church called her Nanny, and she kind of became like a surrogate grandmother to me. But that was my first, I started to really be able to go to that church and started to actually feel again a little bit. I tried to hold everything off, but I started to, and through like a 6-month process, I started to get involved with the church and went through some counseling stuff, and it ended up being like every Tuesday and Wednesday I was doing a counseling type thing for like 6 months, leading up to the shooting at Fort Hood, and then I was really busy dealing with stuff from that. Kind of got put in public affairs and had a mess. That's a whole other story that I had to deal with. But so shortly after that, it was a few weeks after that, and I had a lot of counseling I still needed to go through, and I had what I would call an okay hatred, because realistically, if you're a soldier in the United States during '09 who just did 2 combat tours, you're allowed to hate Muslims, right? Because every time I sat down in a church, and just bear with me, okay? Every time I had sat down with any kind of pastors or believers, big difference between believer and a follower there, that's why I said believers. Sat down with believers at tables, they would talk about Muslims, and the way they talked about them was the way I felt about them. The difference is I'm the one who acted it out. And so I had a hatred for Muslims, completely. And it wasn't just Muslims, because if you looked like you were Arab, to me you were a Muslim. And that's just how it was. I didn't grow up, you know, per se racist as a child, but if you looked at all Arab, that was it. Like, you were a Muslim, I don't really care, and I'm going to watch you like a hawk, and you're never ever going to be behind me. If you're in a store, I'm going to be in another aisle. I don't want to be near you. I hate you, and if you gave me the button, I'd just nuke all of you myself while eating a sandwich and feel no emotion doing it. That's just where I was at. I'm not the only soldier that's there, and there's probably still many that are dealing with that today. That's where I was at. So I had this hatred. The shooting at Fort Hood did not help that. It made it much worse, because everybody was up in arms. There was a mosque down the road, and everybody, you know, the whole area, they had their scapegoat. We have our people to hate. Not a good place to be a Muslim near Fort Hood with 60,000 soldiers and 120,000 people, civilians that are retired military and families working on posts. Biggest army post in the United States. So I went to, here I am trying to focus on getting healing, talking to my family, and trying to work through as much as I know how issues, as much as normal counseling knows how in a church setting, to just keep rehashing all the things I've been through. As much as I could share with them, because I was afraid to really tell them the stuff that made me the way that I am. So I went to the gas station. I'm a creature of habit. I always go to the same pump, and when you're in the same, you end up kind of going the same days of the week because you do the same thing every day, So I went to the gas pump and I showed up and pumping my gas, and I turned around, I'm checking my area out, always afraid, always watching, and always aware of what's going on. And I look behind me, and there's a Muslim man. He's not just Arab. I don't know exactly where he's coming from, but he's actually wearing the dress. There's a mosque up the road. He's completely dressed, not a dress, but he's completely dressed in his actual clothing, And the immediate feeling that I got is just this immense hatred. Like, you gotta freaking be kidding me. I'm just gonna have to go to a different gas station. This disdain, this hatred. I have to pass the mosque on the way home. I'm just irritated, so I'm like, I'm gonna get out of here and pumping my gas. And I have this saying that I'll never forget the rest of my life. It's the most spiritual thing I've ever heard in my whole life. Go pay for his gas. Wow. And I'm like, well, that is not me. I'm like going back to all the churchy stuff from when I was a kid, and I'm about ready to start cursing the devil and telling him he's got to leave. But I knew this was not me. And I knew this wasn't the devil, this wasn't, and I just went, no. I almost said it out loud, and the voice that I heard, it could have been audible for all I know. I know that I was told to go pay for his gas, and I was like, no. I got in my car and I went home, and I was just livid. I walked in the house, slammed the door, you can hear the glass start to shake in it, I'm just ticked off. I went in, I changed, I left, and I went for a drive. I was just beyond upset. I couldn't get those words out of my mind, though. It was like I was being tormented with the words. And I'm like, no, I don't have to. They owe me. They owe me. They killed my friends. They killed guys that were my family. They owe me. I don't owe them anything. And a couple days passed. I couldn't sleep. Got to the point where I didn't even go and lay down in bed. I was just, what's the point? I can't stop. I can't stop thinking about what was said to me. It's just driving me nuts. And so I started to pray, and I said, God, why do you want me to do this? I've been ignoring praying because I know that I'm going to have this showdown with God where He's going to tell me that I have to do this. To me it's just an action that I need to do. To me it's not something that's going to change me because it's just paying for his freaking gas. But at $4 a gallon, it wasn't even the money, it was the fact that I hated him. I don't even know who he is, And in the middle of this really sequestering God, I'm not doing this, Father, thank you so much for everything. Why do you want me to do this? What is your problem? And I'm now screaming at God, and I'm yelling in the car, and I'm driving faster down the road. I already have a lead foot. I'm driving faster down the road, and I pull over, and I'm over by Belton Lake areas, this reserve, and I'm now outside of the car pacing. The door is wide open. The car's running. I left the car in neutral. The car's still moving. I walk back. I put it in park, not putting anything on the brakes, so I'm slamming on. I'm just a complete mess. Put my foot on the brake and put it back in park after I've grinded gears, and I'm just about ruined the car, and I'm just ticked off. I'm now throwing stuff, and God and I are having it out, and in my mind, I'm like, you know what? God is going to strike me dead. This is it. I'm cussing God out. I am just having a time. And plain like day, same voice, next most spiritual thing I've heard in my life, mess scripture up and turn it all backwards, and I'll tell you, I'm not even going to quote the scripture to you. I'm going to tell you in the exact order that I heard it. And I know that theologically You know, maybe it fits, it doesn't, whatever. But this is what I heard. Pray a blessing over those that mistreat and curse you. Do good to those who hate you, and love your enemy. And I was like, I grew up memorizing Bible verses. Like, I know the order. I know that that's backwards. Like, I have to love them, and then out of my love, then I do good to them, and then I bless them, and then I pray for them. But I have to figure out how to love them first, and I hate them, so doing good to them and stuff is not going to ever happen, right? I get this reverse order, and at this point, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I can't do this. So I stayed there for a couple hours, and I stopped talking, and I just sat there and stared blankly off into the lake. And I got in my car, and I started heading home. And I just said, fine. See, oh Lord, bless him. There you go. Like, bless him. That's it, right? I went home. I went and laid down. Had to take a nap, get ready to go to work soon, so I went and laid down. I called it a nap. It was the middle of the night, but I went home to try to get some sleep. And I heard, bless his family. And I'm like, now, I'm not doing this. Like, I said bless him. I said the words. That's enough, right? I'm like, fine, bless his family. I'm like, there we go, bless his family, right? So that's as far as I get. I head to work. I stop to get gas. Same gas station. I'm not worried about seeing him because what are the chances of that, right? But it happened. And I heard, pay for his gas. I'm irritated, and I've said, bless him, bless his family. That's good enough, right? I prayed for them. I blessed them, right? Same man. And I just went, no. In fact, hell no, I'm not doing this. And I got in my car and I left. A few days passed. The next few days were just like the days before. Intensified, worse, much worse. Couldn't sleep. And all I could think about was his family. And all of the kids that I saw when we went into homes and ripped their parents, ripped their dad, or ripped their mom out of there, all I could think were these kids. I just kept seeing the kids, and it was driving me nuts. And when I saw my own kids, I saw his kids. And when I saw my own wife, I saw his wife, and I was like, I think I might kill myself. I'm just done. I'm really just done with this. I can't handle this. A few days go by, and I'm just irritated at work, and everybody knows it, and it's just not a good thing. Everybody knows at home, and so I just don't really go there because realistically I know that I can't, in my mind, I can't ever actually change. There's nothing I can do to undo what's been done to me and what's been done in my mind. I can't get away, I can't get rid of the feelings and stuff. I've tried and I'm just giving up. I haven't touched my Bible in over 2 years, wanted nothing to do with God, and wasn't even trying to seek God at this point. I mean, I just wanted to it was kind of really selfish. I just wanted to get healthy to an extent so I could kind of put up with my family and not at least ruin my marriage, because Amanda wanted the man she married, who was now dead somewhere in Iraq. And a few days passed and I went back to the gas station. I'm getting gas and I'm really not even considering that I'm going to see this man, except that now I'm paranoid. It's the only gas station on the way to my house. I thought about going to another gas station, but again, what are the chances, right? Same man though, fire pump, he pulls in. I've got his car memorized at this point. And he pulls in, and I'm just like, fine! And I yell fine out, and a couple ladies getting gas just kind of looked up, and I'm in uniform, and I'm not even supposed to be near him, so like if I go over to him, like red flag, send police over, someone's gonna kill someone. And I go over and I pull out my debit card and I get just inches from him as he's getting out of his door. And I can feel and see the fear in him. And I know that it's there. Why? Because I hate him still. And I know that this is what I'm portraying. I know this is what, and I know what aggression looks like. So I'm going over there and I'm aggressive and I'm just like, oh, I turn around, swipe my debit card, and I start his gas, and I just walk away. I get in my car, and I go, I did it! Now leave me alone! Hey, I paid for his gas. That's what I was told to do. I even blessed his family and him. I said it once each. I'm good. It got worse. It didn't get better. It did not get better. We're 3 weeks into this thing, and I can't sit still at church. I'm back to where I was 6 months before. I'm a mess. I can't tell anybody about it, because realistically, I go to church with soldiers, ex-soldiers, and people that work with soldiers, and they don't like Muslims as much as I don't like Muslims. I really don't have anyone to talk to about this. My wife knows that I'm upset, but for Pete's sake, I've been upset since the day she saw me when I came back. So nothing's really changed. So I go over and I grab my Bible, and I've never actually seen that much dust on a Bible before, but I grab my Bible and I went over to Luke, and I guess, you know, growing up, I think I read Matthew all the time. Because I thought about Matthew 5, and for some reason Luke 6 just kind of stood out to me. So I went to Luke 6, and I started reading through, and started a little bit before, and I was just basically reading the Sermon on the Mount. No one ever actually read the whole Sermon on the Mount to me growing up at church, because if we actually did those things, we might actually look like Jesus. Just might happen, and we disagree with them, and my whole life has been built the opposite to them, to him and to his message at that point. So I got to verse 27, and this is what I read, same translations in the NASB. But I say to you who hear, love your enemy. Do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. And I had, you can call it an epiphany, a revelation, whatever you want to call it, but I had this realization that I persecuted him, and I cursed him. It wasn't the opposite, because I don't even know him, and he probably isn't wasting his time trying to curse the bald guy, the one soldier out of 150,000 that are around there of ex and serving, and I'm the one who's actually been cursing him all this time. I'm the one who actually persecuted him. Can't really say he's done anything to me. He was an enemy to me, but I actually was an enemy to him. And I kept reading down there, and I got to verse 44, and I read, "For each tree is known by its own fruit. For men do not gather figs from thorns, nor do they pick grapes from a briar bush. The good man out of the good treasure of his own heart brings forth what is good, and the evil man out of the evil, for his mouth speaks from that which fills his heart." And I realized that my heart was filled with evil. That I hated this man for no reason. That I hated his family. I hated every single person that looked like him, and I didn't even know what he stood for. I have no clue what he was like, and I hated him. And I hated everybody like him. But the reality is I was bred to hate him. I mean, I joined the military, and we make up these names for everybody, and it dates all the way back. And if you have anybody that's ever served in the military or even watched movies, you go back to World War II, and you've got Krauts, and so we call German soldiers Krauts. And we call Japanese, well, we call them Japs. It's anything to dehumanize them. In fact, no one goes over to Normandy and visits the grave of the German soldiers that are unmarked and their names aren't even on them. We don't even know who they are. They're stacked up like cordwood inside. We don't even know. Who knows? No one knows the innocent. We have the number of how many American soldiers died and how many allies, and we don't care about the 65 million other people that died. They don't matter, because they're the enemy. And if they're a civilian, then they're just caught in the crossfire and they shouldn't be there in the first place. They're just a casualty of war. They're an acceptable loss. No one goes to Hiroshima and counts the people's names that are from the United States. We get upset when our president goes over there and goes and lays a wreath for the first time in 70 years and just says, let's heal the wounds that have been caused, and people throw him out like he's this horrible person, and really he's the only president that's ever had the intestinal fortitude to say we were wrong, like him or not. He's the only one so far. I know we killed all these innocent people, like women and children that were just going to school and stuff. Yeah, we were actually wrong. Oh, we wouldn't have been able to end the war. What a horrible thing. Acceptable loss. It's acceptable. It's okay. God didn't love them. He loves me. Right?
Yes.
Except I realized that I was the enemy, and the reality was that he loves them, and that there's no way he could love me. Because I don't love me. I know the things that I've done, and there's no way that he could hate them and still love me. Because on that man's worst day, I'm worse than he is. I know that. So I started to ask the questions, who am I? Who am I following? What do I even look like? And I asked those questions all week, and I prayed, and I started to think about his children, and I started to bless them. And for the first time in my life, I think I actually prayed and blessed someone. And I didn't say, like, have them be, meet you, Jesus, and, all this stuff, all this absolute bull crap religious stuff that's not a blessing. We're trying to impose our beliefs on a person through prayer. It's like witchcraft. Yes. And I was just like, I can't do this. So I just blessed him. I said, God bless his children. And I started trying to think of what they even looked like, Bless them. Everybody hates him around here. Bless his family. If anybody, bless him, because he's probably out doing things for people that I wouldn't do. He's probably loving people more than I would love them, because I don't love people. Even civilians. I despise civilians too. It didn't matter if they had brown skin. So I started asking, I said, God, if there's one thing you can do for me. I said, I want to do it right this time. And it went like 2 weeks, and every couple of days I'd stop at the gas station and wait for a couple minutes on the way to work, hoping he'd pull in. I'd head back off. It was almost 2 weeks that went by, and I just kept doing it. I'm gotta find him. I gotta do this right. And he pulled in one day, and I ran up to his car, and he immediately drew back to his car, and he looked freaked out, and I just ran up to him, and I put my debit card in, and I swiped, and I started to pump his gas. I worked at a gas station that was full service when I was in high school. So I grabbed the window washer, and I started washing his windows. Same way I used to in high school, and I got done, and he just stood there. I mean, his face was just blank, like I don't even know what to say, what is going on. At this point, he's probably ready to call the cops. This guy keeps bothering me, and he's pumping my gas, and I don't know what's going on. And I finished, and I went up to him, and I told him, I said, I'm so sorry. Will you forgive me? And he told me these words. He said, I forgive you. And I went back to my car. I went back to my car, and I sat in my car, and I just wept. It's one of the only times that I cried. Like one of the first times. Now I do it all the time. But it's one of the first times that I started to just cry, and I just wept. And I couldn't stop. I couldn't drive. I couldn't even see. And I just sat in my car, and I just wept. That's when I realized that I met Jesus through a Muslim man. And I know that's not like kosher and whatever else, and I don't really care, because the reality is that when I started to love that guy that I deemed least, the one I hated, that is when I learned to love. And everything was backwards than how I learned. I thought a feeling would come, and then I would do good to people. And I waited for the feeling, it never came, and so I couldn't do good to people. But when I started to when I started to bless his family, and when I decided to do good to him, that's when, I'd never seen the guy again, but that's when I fell in love with his family. And that's when I fell in love with the people I hated. And I spent the next couple of years, and I traveled a lot to the Middle East, and I spent the next couple of years paying attention to their culture, and I read the Quran. I know that's not kosher either, and I don't really care. But I wanted to know who the people are, and I wanted to know what they believed. And the reality is that Jesus is the Word of God in the Quran, and He's actually what precedes your words out of your mouth in the Quran. And I started to study even what that meant, and He's the only life bringer in there. And I realized that, this man might not even have known what he was doing. He may have, I don't know. But when he said he forgave me, it was the same thing that Jesus did on the cross. I forgive you. And so my road of blood ended with a face-to-face and my eyes opened. Not by a Christian. Not by those I deemed Christian, whatever that is now. But by those I deemed enemy. There's a couple sayings, and I'm just going to end it with this. I guess probably not any questions to ask me. It's kind of a weird... There's two sayings that you live by in the military. You guys have all heard them. One is for God and country. It's, in Latin, it's pro iris et forces. I mean, Michael's probably knows how to say it better than me. I've been thinking about those, and I keep going back to this climax of my life, and I keep going back to this conversion over and over, and Holy Spirit showed me something different there that I didn't see even before. He was actually showing me mimic theory before I had ever read about it. He was showing me how Jesus actually acts with humanity before I ever before I even knew what words to put on this stuff. He was showing me this, and so I go back to it and I go, this is what you showed me. This is the reality that I actually lived in for this 5 months where you tortured me, Holy Spirit. This is where it was at, where I felt like I wanted to go get me behind me, Satan, but the fact that he loved other people tormented me. It drove me nuts. So for God and country actually means for my home and my hearth. The second word in that is eris. And I didn't even know. When I started looking in this, it was a long time ago, I was like, that sounds a lot like Aries. I was like, oh my God. Aries is the god of war. I'm like, yes, for Aries. For our God of war and my hearth. For my God. And my God was Aries. My God was the one with the spear that stabbed Jesus as he died. That was my God. I'm like, what have I done? I stood for truth, justice, and the American way of life, right? My truth, my justice, and my way of life, rather than the truth, His mercy, and God's way of life. It was completely the opposite, and I went, wow, I don't even know, am I an American anymore? I don't even know what to think of myself. Because everything that I was raised in is completely opposite to you, Jesus. It's not about humanity, but it's about being an American, this elite country of people that just hates everybody around them. I know that offends a lot of Americans, but if they really look at it, it's true. It's true. In the middle of all the crap, and it's been a journey since the end of 2009 with that revelation or whatever. I didn't know what to say to the people at my church. When I shared with a couple people, I was pretty much just about tossed. And are you nuts? Some of the people said, how can you say that? I mean, people that really knew me. How could you say that? How could you say you have to love your enemy? Dude, we know you. We know the things that you've said. We know the things that you've done. Guys that I serve with. And that's why the guys that I serve with are contacting me 2 and 3, every week. I wasn't a representation of Christ to them, ever. Ever talked about God. My God Aries, who I labeled Jesus, but you know, I was never a representation. They see my Facebook and they see the things that I stand for now, and they hear things from other people who have been around me lately, and they're like, this guy, he's like really changed. And these people who I deemed not Christian, who actually act more like Christ than I do. And maybe it sometimes do, still. I guess out of everything that I can share with you guys, you know, and most of you guys are just like leaps and bounds and miles ahead of me in this area, I'm sure. Because there's a lot of things that I'm still like, God, who is it that I put in this box of enemy? Them, who is it that because there's got to be someone that I put there. Who is it that I even cringe seeing at a store? Is it my parents who want nothing to do with me because they're all about for God and country and I can't stand it and speak against it and want nothing to do with it? Is it, you know, they want Aries and I want to just be like Christ, the real human? Is it them that I'm putting in a box? So I keep going and trying to love them and do good to them, and they keep smacking me away every single time. And so at this point, I'm just like, well, I love you, and I guess I'll just keep walking down the road, and I'll just help who I can when I can. You know, but I met Jesus through a Muslim man. That's the reality. That is the truth. The face that I needed to see Jesus out of was the person that I thought was the enemy. And I'll never forget that. There's nothing I can do to do away with that. And I guess I'm just going to continue to share that. And every time someone says, no, they're not our brothers, quite frankly, I get pissed. Because they're spitting on Jesus and pushing Jesus away. And saying that's not our brother. And then I remember that, wow, I was actually worse than they were, so I need to give them a little grace too. So I'm in this battle right now, to be honest with you, between making sure that I give the religious son grace and the son who went on spending his inheritance. Yeah. And I'm just trying to be the father in the middle, because I've been both of the other sons. And I spent my life being both of the other sons, and I just want to be the father in the middle that runs out to both of them. And grabs the son that doesn't think he's worthy and shows him he's worthy, grabs the son that thinks that he's worthy and no one else does, and show him that this is your brother, see? He's not just this son of mine, he's your brother. He's our brother. This is our sister. And so I just keep running up to both of them. Sometimes I get hit by that brother, and sometimes I get whatever, and I guess I'm just going to keep running out there and hoping, and a lot of you guys do the same on your Facebooks and stuff, keep running out to that religious brother who says, they are not our brothers. This is not our sister. This son of yours was out whoring and prostituting around, even though the story doesn't say anything that he did other than spend the livelihood. So I find myself there. I think that's just where I am. And I don't know if that's just where I'm going to stay, but I guess I'm fine with just being there and saying, come. Come. It's free. That calf, it's killed. We're not sacrificing it. It's done. It's killed. It's on the table. Let's come eat. The fat's not going to the priest. We left it on the steaks. Come on. Come eat. Come eat. It's free. It's free. I'll pay for it. Let's go. And that's where I think that's where I'm at. And that's where if I spend my whole life, that's where I want to be. I guess that for me, we talk a lot about it, but that's why I keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper into the truths in Scripture, and not just reading the Bible. I have a Quran at home. Anytime I talk to someone that has some other religious book, I sit down and read the religious book, and I've been studying it to be able to sit down with them, and I don't bring my Bible to go when I talk to them. I just try to talk from something that they'll understand and love them, and pull the truths of who God is and let them see Christ in me. And I know that's probably the most heretical thing on earth, and to a lot of people, I know you guys would be fine, and I don't mind sharing that here. But that's just where I'm at. And I guess if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I know that I sure would rather feel love than the hate that was inside of me. Thank you.